My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a former transgender child. This election, I'm going to be voting for Donald J. Trump. My story begins at a very young age. I was quite the tomboy growing up with many older brothers. Throughout my childhood, I really felt like I related a lot more to my older brothers and the boys around me, more than I did the girls and my female role models. The connection with them just was not all that strong. I had body image issues from not only going through a bit of an early puberty, but also from being exposed to very over-sexualized media growing up. I felt like I had to be something that I wasn't in order to be a good woman. I also had sexual trauma. All of these things culminated in me misunderstanding myself and the way that I was made. And I started to feel the older that I got, the less connected that I was to my body and to my femininity. Eventually, I took upon the name Leo and on the identity of a young boy to try and escape these feelings of discomfort around my developing body and self, and to try and understand myself better. I told my mom and dad about these feelings, and they understood that this was just a consequence of me having a learning disability, being a little bit more on the boyish side, and just struggling with growing up into a young woman. They never believed that I was a boy. They never believed that I was their son or that I was transgender. And even though they wanted me to grow up with my body healthy and fully intact, our doctors coerced them into sending me down this path that would permanently change my life and affect my development into adulthood. They were told that there was no other choice for me, that this is who I was, that I was their son, that they would have to accept me as their son, and they would have to accept that I wanted to undergo physical treatment to change my body. They were given the ultimatum between having a dead daughter to suicide or a living transgender son, and they were given no other option. I was put on to the first few steps of the medical process at 13 years old when I was still in middle school. They blocked my puberty with a chemical castration agent called Lupron, and then they placed me on weekly injections of testosterone to masculinize my body. At 15 years old, before I even had my driver's license, I went under the knife, and I had a double mastectomy to remove my breasts. This served as a turning point in my transition, actually, where I realized that my femininity was precious, that I wanted to one day become a wife and become a mother, to naturally have children of my own and to nurse them. It broke my heart realizing that I never would be able to feed my future infants using what God gave me. Even though this epiphany was painful, it also was freeing, because I now knew that I didn't have to subscribe to these media lies about what it means to be a woman. I didn't have to over-sexualize myself. I didn't have to run away from my beautiful femininity. All I had to do was be myself. And who I am is a beautiful young woman. It doesn't matter that I'm a tomboy. It doesn't matter that I'm unique. Every single thing that I have is a gift. Navigating the process of detransition was not easy, but along the way, I discovered other detransitioners. I began speaking out at the age of 17, and it is voices like mine that have paved the way for the fight against this destructive ideology. And to be frank, at first, I actually was afraid to speak out publicly. I was afraid to speak to conservatives because everything that I was told about them from my childhood was a complete lie. I was told that conservatives, the right, the Republicans, they would hate people like me. They would shun me. They would turn away from and ridicule me. But in fact, they were the first to welcome me with open arms, to meet me where I was at. And they approached me with this compassion that was genuine. They were worried about me. They wanted to give me a place to stay, a place where I could find comfort, but also challenge me in the ways that I needed. They challenged me in ways that the transgender community never did. As a former victim of childhood medical abuse, and as a now aspiring mother, I want to live in a country where I don't have to worry about my little ones in the future having to have their innocence ripped away from them or having to go through what I did. Kamala is not going to be the candidate to make that a reality. She is going all in. She is leading the way for this ideology, for these doctors, for these counselors, for these irresponsible adults to create more destruction in the lives of vulnerable children. How could you, in good conscience, vote for a candidate who is championing a movement that relies on the suffering of youth and the destruction of their healthy, growing bodies? Donald Trump, on the other hand, he's a family man. He knows what it's like to raise children. He has a big, successful family of his own. And he understands that children are wonderful just the way that they are. I want to have a president who is going to safeguard vulnerable children and families like mine. I want a president who understands the importance, the sanctity of women's private and segregated spaces and sports, to shield them from men who want to take advantage of them. And I am faithful in that Donald Trump is going to champion free speech, that he's going to protect vulnerable voices like mine. He understands that reality is objective and that includes sex, and that our rights don't come from our government, but instead were bestowed upon us by our God. I care about the future of my country and of our children, and that is why I am voting for Donald Trump.